do we want to talk about that?
We can talk about it later, yeah. It was fine. It was no issues. Get on the same page with regard to staff.
I know.
All right.
Okay. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And I'd like to remind us that we had agreed to have a moment of silence for our troops in Iraq.
Thank you. And Afghanistan. And all over.
Anywhere we have troops.
Wherever we have our troops.
Korea.
Okay. May I see a copy of the agenda? I think I have everything else in front of me but that. Thank you so much. Okay, so public comment. All right. Well, I want to welcome Andrew Gottlieb, who is the Executive Director of the Cape Cod Wastewater Collaborative. Hi, Andrew.
Hi, Sue.
How are you?
Fine, how are you?
Thank you for coming.
Always a pleasure.
We are here today to speak about names that were put forward. It is time. The Wastewater Collaborative has been in existence now 4+ years. In its ordinance, it says after 4 years, and it's going into its 5th year, it should be reviewed to see its success and to take a review of the structure and mission and take a look at how it's doing and that sort of thing. So we have put forward 2 towns. We put 2 letters, both of which seem to be somewhat confusing to some towns. The second one was to clarify that we were asking for appointees to the
Oversight committee.
The review committee. Did you got it more clearly? It was stated more clearly in the second letter. I'm sure it went to you, did it not?
No, well, yeah, I saw it, and we do have a person, but I'm not sure you've received the letter yet. I don't think you have.
No, we didn't.
Okay. Well,
I mean, I guess so the way the ordinance is structured, it asks that for people representing, I guess, let me back up. The board has discretion to appoint whoever it wants, and however many people you want. The only limitation is that if you're appointing people to represent a town, as opposed to someone who lives in one of the towns but is sort of representing a broader view, the people you select to represent a given town need to have been nominated by that town.
I see.
So you're not limited to composing the review committee by members nominated by the towns. It's just, if you want to have a couple of people who are representing the town perspectives, you just have to choose among the pool of people who the towns have notified us that they want to select. So the town representatives that you've received thus far are Joe Carrera from Bourne, Florence Selden from Chatham, Cheryl McMahon from Dennis, Jane Crowley from Eastham, Larry
Valentine.
Thank you. Valentine from Harwich, Gussie McCusick from Orleans, and Pat Padron from Truro. Those are the ones we've got as town reps.
And several of those are already members of the collaborative. Larry, Jane,
and Pat, and Gussie are currently members. Cheryl McMahon had been Dennis's representative. She's no longer. That's it.
I think it's probably not a bad thing to have a couple of people from the collaborative on it. And I tend to, since Gussie is not the chair any longer, she can maybe step back and take a look in now that she can speak probably more freely and not be on the side of defending or advocating. She would be one of those people, but I think we should only limit it to 2 people from the collaborative and open it up to other people, because then it's just all the collaborative telling us how great they are. And I'm sure they probably are, but we have to take a look at that. So, what is there? Do you have any thoughts on those names?
Well, I think, don't you find there are some other names that have expressed some interest in serving. I'm sorry. I'm neglectful. George Bryant was also
Yes.
recommended from Provincetown by the town.
Right, and he would be representing an assembly person too. So I
You
think.
kind of get 2 out of that. So the other other people that have expressed interest in this, you could George Bryant, Gussie,
There's Elliot Carr.
Elliot Carr has expressed interest. Maggie Geist has expressed interest.
Right.
And Fred Shirago has expressed
Yes,
interest.
his interest, right. And Fred would be, he's the president of the Barnstable Town Council. So that would be, I think,
Especially given what they've just recently.
Yeah.
what they just went through. Exactly. I think it would be a
So
There may be
good.
some different perspectives.
Become the benchmark for future financial models.
Right. A lot of this comes down to the money and,
Right.
and regionalization.
Right.
There's some openness there.
Is there a limit to the number of people?
There's not.
Well, there is
There's
not.
the practical
Is it,
limit.
well, the practical.
The practical
yeah.
limit. I think you don't want to go much beyond 7 to 8.
I was going to say that's not.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly. That's what I was
I
thinking.
think you want
too.
this to be relatively timely and tight.
Right. Yes.
There is the issue of how many people actually show up to all of the meetings. So, one of the, going back to the board committee, for example, there were, although the majority of them showed up to most of the meetings, it was useful to have people who had expressed interest who could be members that could contribute. But the issue is whether or not they would commit the time and energy to do this. And it always seems that we do this in the summertime for some reason. So,
Well, that's in exploring what I would propose of how this would go is that it stay short and focused. I was sort of looking at the way the SEDS focus groups were done. I mean, they were very intense, very focused, and done, and they had a great outcome. There wasn't a lot of room for a lot of deliberation and going off track. They had their chores and stuck to it. So I think that, the way I would see this is 3, no more than 4, but 3, you could do a couple of hours or 3-hour meeting, 2 to 3 hour meeting of gathering and reviewing, gathering all of the information of what they've done, what they've accomplished, reviewing it. The second meeting could be evaluating it, further discussion, and then the third could be their recommendations out of that.
in the SEDS process, they had identified who the chair was of the different subcommittees, and that chair was given that responsibility and charge.
Right.
If you designate a committee and you don't designate a chair, you don't have a charge, then you basically are you have a wish of what they want, what you would like them to do, but they don't really have a direction as to what you're going to
I
accomplish.
think
And
you
I-
guys need to give
Specific.
specific criteria upon which the success of the collaborative be measured. Because otherwise you end up spending a lot of time with this big subjective conversation
Exactly.
that, maybe leads you somewhere, maybe doesn't.
Right.
So I think you guys ought to express the criteria and then also do something to express in terms of recommendations, issues and things that are important to this board. Primary ones that I've heard from you in my time coming to talk to you has been regionalization, finances, and public education.
Exactly right.
I mean, that's
And that's guided by
it's been fairly consistently, I've been talking to you the longest about this, Bill. That's consistently the message I've gotten from you, both in public and in private conversations, is where we ought to be evaluate, and it seems to be, you know, along the line. I haven't heard a change in focus from the new board.
The one thing I was mentioned to you earlier, that I attended a sewer social last night, a public education effort on the part of the town of Falmouth to educate its citizens about the nutrient management, program and where it's going. And because the decision-making date is actually August, which is next month. But I was thinking whether or not the collaborative focuses on the status of technologies, because people are hearing all sorts of things about what's out there. Some of those technologies haven't even been approved in the United States yet. I mean, they may be used in other countries. But it seems like we need to have some kind of a general understanding, all the communities, of what is the status of all these technologies? Which ones can we actually look to now? And which ones are not going to be on the radar screen for another 5 to 10 years, even though they're out there somewhere. And George is doing his experimental program out at the base. So I think somewhere, is that a role for the collaborative?
I think it can be. I mean, I think it's sort of a combination of the three relevant county departments, us, county health, and the commission, to be helping towns understand what's real and what's not real. There's a lot of technology hucksters out there saying, use my system and you don't have to sewer, you don't have to do whatever.
Right.
There's other people saying, there's technologies out there that can really shave down what you're doing. There's project, and this is one area where we have taken a lead, for example, enhanced use of wetlands to produce nitrogen. And you guys just authorized that contract a couple weeks ago for us to, really define what are these projects, can they be approved regulatorily, state, federal, and if not, which the answer is likely not, what does the county want to put forward as solutions? So that we can say to towns, nitrogen attenuation through changing wetlands is real, put it in your plans, or it's a nice idea and it's not real because you can't get it approved. So, don't think anymore that you can shave 20% of your nitrogen load through wetlands attenuation, plan sewers for it. So I think, that's one area where we will be in a position to be able to tell towns, this is real, this isn't. And technology is another area. We haven't done so much of it as a collaborative. We've really relied on the work that George is doing out at the Title V Test Center to sort of weed out what's real and what isn't real in terms of septic technologies. Doesn't mean we get into the issues about like urine converting toilets or whether, because they're not approved for use and they're not legal under the Massachusetts Plumbing Code, whether they could be, should be, and towns therefore could think about it, or they should just put it aside and say we're not going to consider it. But that's something certainly that we could do. And I think part of your charge to this group might be, say, take a look at where we are today, and to get to implementation in the next 5 years, what are the big issues? What are some of the obstacles towns need? And how do you set this collaborative up to address those issues? And one of them we could express is, available technologies. Another is regulatory approvability. Another is, financing. Another is, regionalization. And how do you facilitate that, other than just sort of saying, waving the regionalization flag,
right.
But what do you really do to help two towns do something?
I think like a corollary to Pat's is really this whole issue that George is exploring, where you try to help the homeowners bridge these technologies where they have a septic system today. We know that somewhere down the road, 5-10 years, there's going to be a sewer system. How do you, and they need to upgrade their septic system, how do we kind of keep them from, how do we have them spend as little as possible?
How do we help people?
How do we help people do that
Right.
until the sewer system
To upgrade their
comes along?
system without having them
To me, to kind of develop or recommend kind of the best management practices or the best methodologies to get to that point.
I mean, you may want to ask this group to think about, the collaborative to a certain extent, county health to a certain extent, has sort of taken sort of this honest broker role thus far, and sort of, bring information to people without taking that much of a position on you ought to be doing this and you ought to be doing that and you not ought to be doing that. And one of the questions that this group might look at is, does that serve the needs of the Cape for the next 5 years, or should the county be out there being a little bit more positional in its advocacy of a couple of sets of solutions, which I think is some of the thoughts that you've conveyed over time. That we should be a little bit more aggressive in advocating. There's 3 types of solutions out there. You need to pick one.
Well, the issue has always been, who is the person that will implement the solutions that we're suggesting? I think we've spent a lot of time and energy looking at town governments as being the ones that will be the allies, but I think that we're at a stage where we have to look at who we all serve to find out if we can mobilize, let's say, the citizens and taxpayers to get behind the step. That's that was my thought on
right. Does the county have, and I understand at the point in time in which fiber was created, there was more of this is a of and by the towns entity, and the county serves more of the convening role and a non-implementer role. And does it make sense to revisit that model?
Yes,
Without prejudging the outcome.
exactly.
May I just say something to that? In looking at and sitting in on the collaborative meetings, there's 15 towns, and the regionalization is very important that towns explore this because it's going to save them money. And now even Chatham, last night I was in Chatham for the subcommittee review of their wastewater, through the Cape Cod Commission, of their wastewater treatment plan. And there were a couple of things that came out of that. They have ponds and estuaries there that are in very bad shape. They explored a lot of the different alternatives prior to going to sewering. They really did go do their homework over time, and they ticked off the list. And they had very good reasons for why, in the end, it was more fiscally sound, and the outcome was going to be a better outcome by going with the sewering. Now they're sewering their entire town, and some towns don't have to do that. Wellfleet would probably go with its village and downtown, and then you have the National Seashore, and those that are in it, they can be assisted with alternatives. These are things that have to be discussed with towns, and also now there's talk between the 3 Outer Cape towns of how can they collaborate on their efforts. My feeling is, I think that in the beginning you had to go with the 15 towns so that the towns didn't feel like all of a sudden there was this heavy hand coming in telling them what to do. I think now all of the towns are aware of the seriousness of this issue, and the only people I really hear that from about having that representation are the people who are on the collaborative, the ones that are concerned more about having 15-town representation. And talking to some of the towns that I have, they would be more than open to maybe even a different framework. And so that's saying it for that. But I also feel that at times, as a county, even though we were created by the citizens to address the regional issues and the issues that we can have an impact on regionally, that's why the citizens came together and reorganized the county in 1988. So I think that in some ways we have to stop sort of feeling apologetic that we exist and that we are here not just to be a convening government, but one that actually pushes for results and tries to get people there a little bit more without being a heavy hand, but to work more vigorously with towns to get them on the page. So
a couple of things. One of the things that I learned from listening to a lot of people the other night was I think that, and maybe the collaborative is something like this, is that when you meet with the citizens, their questions really surround technology and they surround funding. I mean, that's what they want to know. And they also ask that question, what if I just put in a Title V system 2 years ago and spent $35,000? It was suggested by somebody in the group that there was a way for someone who, let's say they spent 30, and you knew that the sewer was coming in maybe 5 years to that particular area. So that person would take 10,000 of the money that they put into that and sort of create this escrow account. And when the sewers came along, that individual got a $10,000 credit when in their sewer hookup costs when that happened. Now that was another model that was suggested. And the other thing that I saw was in looking for information and being able to present it in a way that people are going to hear what they need to hear, is some sort of a timeline that would have 3 subjects on it. This is July of 2009. Here's where we are in the planning process. Here's the status of the technologies that are available to us now. This is what we're planning for your particular area of the town. And thirdly, these are some of the funding models that we can look at. Either totally the homeowner funds the sewering in their area, or the town funds it. If they fund it under a betterment, what's the betterment? Is it 70-30, 60-40, or does it get spread out completely among all the residents of the town with a betterment or with something on the tax rate, something of that sort?
Right.
But
I mean, to date, that's been left to the towns.
yes.
And again, open question is whether
But
you
that's
all
where-
want the county spending time doing that for towns. We can do that. That can be done. It's been philosophically a place where county hasn't wanted to go today.
And maybe not. I'm just saying that this is,
Although
from what I've
sewer
heard.
hookups are eligible for a septic betterment loan.
Yes, they are.
Through the thing.
And then the
That's all news to people typically.
Yeah, it is. That was mentioned too, that they can apply to the county for those zero.
Right.
Zero
And that was
interest
news when
loans.
we participated in the discussion with Barnstable, up until the morning of the vote, talking to some of the councils, that
They did not. They weren't
that
aware
piece
of it.
of, that piece of the resource pie that the county offers was not universally known.
So in terms of the issues that the towns are facing, what do they need to do on their own, and where can the county actually help them? I think that's where.
I mean, what the county can do is say, these are the necessary steps, and this is the information that experience has shown in other towns you need to be able to provide in order to move the project forward.
Exactly.
And say, here's your municipal checklist of, you need to touch this base, touch this base, touch this base, touch this base. The numbers come out however the numbers come out for each community, and they may work and they may not work, but typically this is what people want to know. And again, that certainly doable. It is reflective of a more activist, advocacy-based perspective. And I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but it's different, and it's not where a lot of people are. And at least, in my view, a lot of collaborative.
Would you define when you say people, what is the population you're talking about?
I'm reflecting on my sense of the membership of the collaborative board.
Collaborative.
Of the collaborative.
But then we go to whether or not they actually represent the population that we're trying to engage and involve in order to accomplish our objectives.
Right. That's why I think that's the ultimate value of this outside group.
That's right.
Something looking at that on your behalf.
Which would be to decide, if we decide who we're supposed to serve, whether it's the town municipal government and moving them along, or whether or not we need to, using our tools that are in place, to, let's say, to approach the individuals or collections of individuals who want to move forward with projects, then I think that that's something that we have to define. And then I think working backwards from that, I think that we then come as to what organizational structure we need in order to support it, and what types of what type of ordinance we need in order to to implement.
Right. I think fundamentally you're right, Bill. I think you just sort of lay out the criteria upon which you want the last 4 years to be evaluated, and then you put forward a series of questions or criteria upon which you want the future, what you want out of this, which, again, I think is implementation, regionalization, and cost savings, and public awareness. Those, and within those 4, you can find room for just about anything you want. and say that, you know, on a going forward basis, if your objective is to you know, achieve those ends, what structure and membership and approach, philosophy make the most sense. If it's continue what you have, then the recommendation is make no change. If it is we need some change, then the expectation of this group should be to find what that change should be and give us your best take on what you would want to see changed in order to do that.
Mark?
I just wanted to say, Andrew, when we put this together and we were doing the Blue Ribbon panel, DEP was telling us that dealing with these issues and encouraging towns to deal with these issues on a watershed basis, which means actually talking to your neighbors, was the emphasis. Has that proved the case?
Yeah.
Have we been successful in that, or is that something that we need going forward to do better on?
Not to prejudge the conclusions of the group, but I think that there has been an improvement in that the, you know, collaborative provides a forum for people to talk to one another and talk to their neighbors, and there are good examples through the shared watershed grants of towns in a systematic and structured way talking about whether it's Mashpee Town with White Bay, or whether it's the Pleasant Bay Alliance communities on the two projects that the county funded, or Orleans with its neighbors on the funding model that we funded, or Barnstable and Yarmouth talking thus far successfully about shared system there. There are clearly conversations going on. So from that measure, progress.
Mm-hmm.
From the measure of two towns doing a project together, we're not there yet.
Right. And I do think that you can call it having a more activist role as a county, or aggressive. Some people may tend to look at it that way. I think that if you are bringing information that is only going to save the town money, time, and error, it's not a bad thing to come in and kind of push the envelope a little bit with towns so that they understand that you're there. You know, we are the government and we are here to help, as opposed to not help. So, and I think that that's the attitude that.
There's no doubt that the county position allows us to see what's happened in a number of the towns and be enough out of the fray to step back and look at what's happened. And you look at what's happened this spring. You had substantial progress in two communities. One, Chatham voting money to implement their project. Orleans voting to ratify their planning, which is obviously going to lead to capital. A less successful undertaking in Barnstable over a number of projects. And you can step back from that and say, well, there's a mixed message from what we're seeing in the towns. Or you can step back from it and say, given what happened here, really what you saw is two towns able to move forward because the residents perceived both the need for the project and felt that cost apportionment and the impact on the individual was fair.
Exactly.
And in the one that was less successful, you didn't hear a lot of questioning about project merit necessarily, but you did hear a lot of concerns over the fairness, the impact, and the apportionment of it. And, so I think the county can step back from being in the middle of that and say, all right, well, if we're talking to the other 13 or 12 towns, what do we tell them about what just happened here? Well, you can say, well, there are some lessons here, gang. And, if you want to be able to proceed down your checklist, then one of the things you need to process through very effectively in your community is this impact, apportionment, and fairness questions. And, failure to do that, you've got a pretty good example of what happened when that didn't get run through adequately and people didn't feel that it had been reviewed adequately. Mm-hmm. So, our position to you as a county is you need to think through this. Here's some tools that help you think through it. Here's some models that help you think through it. We'll sit down and run it with you. And then you can go talk to your community about it. And you come out where you come out. But, I think it's fair for the county to say, we don't think that projects that don't have a public share in them are going to be successful.